Hello class, how are you guys? I hope you guys are doing well, and I wanted to share with you a special story today for our listening and learning. We finished up all the information about the farm. Remember, we've been studying the farm, and now we're going to go on and we're going to study about the Native Americans or the American Indians. We're going to study about them for the next few days, so I hope you guys like this story. Long ago, before you and I can even remember, long before your grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents can remember, there were no people living on the land where we live today. There were woods and plains, but no people. There were rivers and lakes, but no people. There were deserts and mountains, but no people. Do you know what a desert is? Look here. A desert is a large, dry area of land that gets very little rain. I've lived in the desert before. There were plenty of birds and fish. Look at those beautiful birds and fish in the water. And there was animals and insects. But there were no people. But that was thousands of years ago, much earlier than any of us can remember. The first known people who lived in America, called Native Americans or American Indians, lived in all parts of the continent. Some lived in the desert, others lived in the mountains, some lived in the woods, and others lived on the coast near the ocean. The coast is the land next to the ocean or sea. This is the picture of the coast, right where the land meets the water. People of the desert lived very differently from the coastal people. Can you guess why that would be? You are going to learn about some of the different ways that America's first known people, or Native Americans, lived. The Native Americans of long ago all needed the same things we need today. They needed food and water to stay alive. They needed shelter, places to protect themselves from the weather and wild animals, and they needed clothing to keep themselves warm and dry. What did the Native Americans need to live? Share with somebody that you're with right now what kinds of things they might have needed to live. But the food and desert people, what they ate was not the same kind of food that the coastal people ate. And the houses that protected people in the woods did not look the same as the houses of those who lived in the desert. Let me show you some of their houses. Are you ready? Anybody know what this one's called? This is called a teepee. Say that. A teepee. Look at there. That's a teepee. What about this one? Does anybody know what this one's called? It's called a weetus. Weetu. Look at that. It's made of wood, sticks. Here's another one. This is called a Hogan. Hogan. Look at it, it's got dirt on the top. And this one is called a Pueblo. Can you imagine living in a house like that, made of rocks and clay and mud? This is called a Longhouse. Native Americans of long ago had to rely on their knowledge of nature, of the earth, of the plants and the animals that surrounded them. And everywhere they roamed or wandered, these Native Americans found ways to borrow or use from the earth all that they needed to live. What does the word borrow mean? It means to take or use something for a little while and then return it. So they would borrow things from the land all the time. All right. Let me show you these pictures. These are going to be some pictures of things, of ways that they were able to make food. Some Native Americans grew their own vegetables and fruits. We know what this is. Crops, right? Remember studying about crops? Some other Native Americans hunted buffalo. Do you think you'd like to eat buffalo? Some other Native Americans hunted woodland animals, so little animals that lived in the woods. Others caught fish from rivers, lakes, and oceans. Do you think you could catch your dinner? And some Native Americans cooked their food on an open fire. Others baked their foods in specially made ovens. This is a special bread oven. How many Native Americans of long ago get their food? How did they? Tell somebody who's sitting by you if you remember any of the ways we just talked about. The Native Americans also needed water, but there were no sinks with running water inside their homes. So where do you think these Native Americans found their water long ago? Native Americans collected rainwater. They also got their water from the lakes, rivers, or streams. Native Americans of long ago did not have cars and trucks. There were no buses, no trains, no planes. So, do you know how they got around? Let me show you a picture. Long ago, Native Americans traveled by foot. Here is the word foot. It is being used to describe a part of your body that is at the end of your leg. A foot is about this long, 1 foot, one walking foot. There were no paved roads, and Native American paths were made by pounding of their own footsteps or the hooves of their animal herds. Did you notice what he has on his feet right there? After the Native Americans were here for many years, they started riding horses. After that, some of them traveled on horseback. Have you ever rode a horse? I have. It's pretty fun. And still others traveled by, anybody know what that is? A canoe. Can you say that? Canoe. Those who lived in the woods used their feet to make their way through thick forests of trees. After many years, those who lived on the open plains welcomed the speed of horses to carry them long distances. And those who lived near lakes and rivers relied upon canoes to carry them across the great waters. Look at this picture. What do you see in this picture? No matter where they lived, Native Americans made all of their own clothing. Some Native American women and girls wore skirts and dresses. Men and boys often wore breechcloths and leggings. They used materials from their surroundings to make their own clothes. Would you like to make your own clothes? What do you see in this picture? Some Native Americans wore clothing made of animal skins, elk, deer, buffalo, and rabbit, and they often decorated their clothing with beads, porcupine quills, and fringe. During the cold winter months, they wore coats of animal fur to stay warm. Others wore clothes made from the soft inner bark of the cedar tree and sometimes decorated with seashells. What do you see in this picture? What do you see? Other Native Americans wore clothing made of fibers from different plants. Cotton, we know cotton comes from a plant, and yucca, and trimmed them with animal bones. In winter, they covered themselves with cloaks to stay warm. Would you like a coat like this instead of the one you have? Many men, women, boys, and girls in each of the Native American tribes across the land, from the oceans to the plains to the woods, wore moccasins on their feet. Tribes are groups of similar people who share a language, customs, or laws. They also have the same ancestors, such as the same great-great-grandparents. Some Native Americans, however, preferred bare feet. Would you like to wear shoes like this, or would you like to just go with bare feet? And so you can see the people who first came to live on this rich and varied land that we now call the United States of America were just as rich and varied as the land itself. They were alike in some ways and different in other ways, just as the people of America are today. Do you think all Native Americans looked the same? Probably not, right? Do you think they all had the exact same type of clothes? Probably not. What did all the Native Americans of long ago, did they live in the same place? No. They lived in different areas on the coast, on the plains, and in the desert. Now, I have some questions for you, so pause after each one of these questions to tell someone the answer. What three things do all people, including the Native Americans, need to live? What three things? If you said food, clothing, and shelter, you got it right. Pat yourself on the back. What kinds of houses did these Native Americans live in? Can you remember any of the names? A teepee, a wetu, Hogans, pueblos, or longhouses. How did the Native Americans of long ago get their food? How did they get their food? They farmed the land, hunted, and they fished in the water. How did the Native Americans get water? Where did they get their water from? They got their water from the lakes, streams, and the rivers. What kinds of things did Native Americans of long ago use to make clothing? Do you remember what they used to make clothes? Animal skins, trees, and plants. Now, think about some similarities. Remember, that means things that are the same. What are things that are the same between these different tribes? What are some things that are the same? They all got their water the same way. They all made their own clothes. Those are some things that are the same. But what are some things that are different? Do they all look the same? No, they look a little bit different. And maybe they did a little different things to get their food. Remember, some hunted and some went fishing. So they all had different ways of getting food. I hope you've liked this story about the Native Americans, and I hope you've liked listening to this story. I have a special project to finish up the day for you guys. You're gonna get to make your own moccasins. So I hope you'll send me a picture, and I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson on the Native Americans.